Overnight, without warning, the United States military dropped bombs on one of the most strategically critical pieces of land on Earth, a small island in the Persian Gulf. You've probably never heard of it, but what happens there in the next 48 hours could determine whether you pay $5 a gallon at the gas pump or 10. Kharg Island, Iran's crown jewel, the single hub responsible for 90% of Iran's oil exports. And as of today, it is burning. Welcome to day 14 of the U.S.-Israel war with Iran. I'm your name. This is your live update. Stay with me, because what happened in the last 6 hours changes everything we thought we knew about how and when this war ends. But first, for anyone just joining us, let's take 90 seconds to answer the most important question. How did the world get here? On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated surprise military campaign codenamed Operation Epic Fury. In a single 12-hour window, nearly 900 strikes hammered Iranian military sites, air defense systems, nuclear facilities, and command infrastructure across Iran. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the campaign's stated objective was the complete dismantlement of Iran's military capability and regime change itself. The trigger? Years of escalating confrontation over Iran's advancing nuclear enrichment program. According to Al Jazeera, nuclear negotiations in Geneva had collapsed in mid-February after Iran refused to halt uranium enrichment. Trump, according to reporting from USA Today, had previously warned Iran after a June 2025 conflict, "Don't rebuild your weapons program." Tehran apparently did not listen. Within hours of the first strikes, Iran retaliated with a massive wave of ballistic missiles and drones targeting Israel and U.S. military bases across the region. Since that night, the war has not paused for a single day. As of this morning, 14 days in, here's what the scorecard looks like. More than 1,300 Iranian civilians have been killed, according to CNN. 7 American service members are dead, confirmed by Fox News. 11 Israelis have lost their lives to Iranian strikes, per Al Jazeera. And the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries 20% of the world's oil, is partially mined and effectively destabilized. This is the largest oil supply disruption in recorded history, according to Politico. And today, it just got significantly worse. Let's get into today's lead story. In the early hours of this morning, President Trump announced that the U.S. military had, and I'm quoting directly, totally obliterated every military target on Kharg Island. According to Bloomberg, more than 15 separate explosions rocked the island overnight. The targets included air defense batteries, a naval base, and the island's airport control tower. According to Reuters, the island handles the loading and exporting of roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil. That is not a typo. Now, and this is critical, Trump was careful with his language this morning. He said the U.S. destroyed the military assets on Kharg Island, not the oil infrastructure itself. The refineries, the tanker terminals, the pipelines, those for now appear to have been deliberately spared. Why does that distinction matter? Because Iran immediately understood the message. According to NBC News, Tehran responded within hours, threatening to strike oil facilities across the Gulf region if the U.S. escalates further. Iran's message was essentially, "You touched our island, touch our oil, and we touch yours." And here's the bigger picture. According to Reuters, Kharg Island processes crude that flows to customers across Asia, Europe, and beyond. China, one of Iran's biggest oil clients, has not yet made an official statement, but markets are already reacting, and we'll get to that in a moment. Here's the question every analyst is now debating. Was the Kharg Island strike a final warning, or the opening move of a full economic war? Trump seemed to answer that himself, saying the Navy is, quote, standing by, and warning that Iran's oil infrastructure could be the next target. For Iran, a nation whose economy is already under crushing sanctions, losing Kharg Island's operational capacity would not just be a military blow, it would be an existential economic catastrophe, and Tehran knows it. While the world was watching Kharg Island burn, something equally alarming was happening in Baghdad. This morning, a missile struck a helipad inside the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad, Iraq. Al Jazeera confirmed the strike. Smoke was seen rising from the compound and videos circulated on social media. Iraqi security officials say the attack came shortly after U.S. forces struck and killed 2 commanders from Kataib Hezbollah, a powerful Iran-backed militia operating inside Iraq. Let that sink in for a moment. The American embassy, the most fortified diplomatic structure in the Iraqi capital, was just hit by a missile in broad daylight. This development is significant for one reason that goes beyond the obvious security implications. It tells us the war is no longer contained within Iran's borders. Iraq, a country that has tried carefully to stay neutral, is now being dragged into the conflict, willingly or not. Iran's network of proxy militias across the region, what analysts call the axis of resistance, is activating. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon is simultaneously escalating, with rockets striking northern Israel and, per the Palestine Chronicle, injuring dozens. Israel has responded with strikes on southern Beirut and South Lebanon. The war, which the White House initially framed as a targeted surgical campaign against Iran's nuclear capabilities, is now a multi-front conflict stretching from Tehran to Beirut to Baghdad. And the U.S., which has approximately 5,000 additional sailors and Marines now deploying to the Middle East, confirmed by NBC News, is doubling down rather than pulling back. Let's talk about something that affects you right now, whether you're in New York, London, Mumbai, or Tokyo. Before this war started, Brent crude oil was trading at around $71 a barrel. According to a Congressional Research Service report, within 24 hours of the first strikes on February 28th, it jumped 8% overnight to $77. That was day one. We are now on day 14. Oil has since surged as high as $120 a barrel, nearly a 70% spike, before pulling back to what Al Jazeera reports is still about 17% higher than pre-war levels. CNN confirmed earlier this week that for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, oil has broken $100 a barrel. Politico called it directly the largest oil supply disruption in recorded history, and the Strait of Hormuz is at the center of it. Iran has effectively mined the waterway and disrupted the flow of an estimated 20 million barrels per day of crude oil and oil products. That is roughly 20% of the world's entire daily oil supply, according to the World Economic Forum. The economic fallout is cascading globally. Euronews reports that every 10% rise in oil prices pushes global inflation up by 0.4% and shaves 0.2% off worldwide economic growth. Stock markets have been falling across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Chatham House warns that inflation across Europe and Asia could run 0.5 percentage points higher for all of 2026. In an attempt to stabilize prices, the International Energy Agency announced, at Trump's direct request, a coordinated release of 400 million barrels of oil from member nations' strategic reserves. That's a record intervention. And yet, prices remain elevated. Here's the uncomfortable truth. As long as Hormuz remains compromised, and as long as Kharg Island's future is uncertain, the global economy is effectively being held hostage by the outcome of this war. So, is this the end of the war? Or is it just the beginning of a much darker phase? President Trump said this morning that the U.S. is way ahead of schedule and that Iran has been decimated. He also offered Iran a direct off-ramp. Open the Strait of Hormuz, stand down your proxies, and the oil infrastructure stays intact. It is, in classic Trump style, equal parts military threat and negotiating position. But here's what the analysts aren't saying out loud on television. Iran has few good options left, but it still has dangerous ones. Tehran has already threatened Gulf energy sites, which would drag Saudi Arabia and the UAE into the direct blast radius of this conflict. It has proxies in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, all still active, and it has been launching drones and missiles targeting both U.S. bases and Israeli cities simultaneously. According to Wikipedia's running tally of the 2026 Iran war, roughly 40% of Iranian launches are aimed at Israel and 60% at U.S. targets in the region. That is not the behavior of a nation that believes it has been decimated. The White House is divided, per the Palestine Chronicle's Day 14 live blog. Some advisors are pushing for a rapid ceasefire before the economic damage to the U.S. and global markets becomes irreversible. Others are arguing for pressing the military advantage. The next 48 to 72 hours will likely define which faction wins that internal debate. The United Nations Security Council has already demanded a halt to attacks on Gulf neighbors. So far, that demand has been completely ignored by all parties. Here's what you need to watch for in the next 24 to 72 hours. First, will Iran retaliate directly against oil infrastructure in the Gulf in response to the Kharg Island strikes? If they do, we are looking at a supply shock that dwarfs anything we have seen today. Second, will the U.S. Embassy attack in Baghdad push Washington into a wider ground engagement in Iraq? 7 Americans are already dead. Political pressure at home is growing. Third, does Trump's ahead-of-schedule language signal that a negotiated pause is imminent? Or is it posturing designed to pressure Tehran at a moment of maximum military vulnerability? And fourth, watch China. Beijing has stayed conspicuously quiet. But China is the single largest buyer of Iranian oil. If Beijing makes a move, diplomatically or economically, this entire chessboard shifts overnight. Day 14 is ending. Day 15 begins in a matter of hours. And based on everything we have seen over the past 2 weeks, do not expect quiet. I'm Henry. If this update was valuable to you, hit subscribe because this story is moving faster than any single headline can capture. Our next live update drops the moment there are new developments. Stay informed, stay safe. We'll see you back here very soon.